After the huge success of Alone in the Dark and how much of a big influence it was to the gaming media, everyone knew that a sequel was inevitable. While this game was one of the biggest hits at its time, the game itself in general wasn't perfect, and there was a big room for improvement.
And of course, we are here to discuss the sequel that followed after the groundbreaking origin of survival horror, Alone in the Dark 2, released in 1993. Just so you know, a game sequel is supposed to take the mechanics and elements from the previous century and improve upon them. And how does Alone in the Dark 2 manage to hold up compared to the original? Well, let's talk about the development history first, shall we? Oh, you're curious why I said quote-unquote development history? Be prepared to be disappointed because there is actually nothing to say about the development of this game.
I literally tried to do research on the internet to find information about how this game came to be, and I couldn't find anything interesting to talk about. Infogram did not share a public story about the development of Alone 2, which is already not a good sign of what is about to come in the next few minutes.
One of the things I like to do here in my channel is to help my audience learn interesting details and information about their favorite horror games. Unfortunately, I can't do that here. There are only two things I can say about Alone in the Dark 2 in its development stage. So here we go.
The first thing I'm gonna say is that before this game came out, Infogram made this small demo called Jack in the Dark, in which you play as a little girl named Grace, who finds herself trapped in a toy store, and her objective is to free herself and Santa Claus from this haunted place. You have to kill this Jack in the Box toy thing with a mirror in order to save the day and finish this demo.
This is a weird concept to use as a promotional setup for a sequel to a horror game like Alone in the Dark, but whatever.
They released this small game during Christmas in 1993, so I guess that's why he has a holiday theme to it. It takes only 5 minutes to finish it. You free Santa from the store, he gives Grace a princess costume, and off he goes. After completing this game, you get a small montage of teasing images for Alone in the Dark 2. The last thing I can say about this game's history is that Frederick Reino did not come back for the sequel. Infogram wanted him to direct this game as well, but they also demanded him to use the exact same engine as the first game, like the same graphics and same controls. Fred of course disagreed with that, saying it was too great for a restriction, and along with his development team, he left the studio.
So what came after one of the most influential video games at that time, without involving the original creator? Let me get this out of the way first. Alone in the Dark 2 is one of the worst video games I ever experienced in my gaming life. Because everything that you love about the survival horror genre is not in this game whatsoever! Why is that the case? Let's find out.
The game begins with an investigator named Ted Stryker, who sneaks into a mansion filled with mobsters and gangsters, located in Hell's Kitchen, California. Stryker is a senior partner in business with Edward Carnby, who are both investigating the disappearance of Grace Saunders, the little girl that you played as in Jack in the Dark. Eventually, the trail of clues led Stryker to this mansion and decided to reach and rescue Grace all on his own. Right off the bat, we are already introduced to something that wasn't in the first game, in-game cutscenes. For a game made in 1993, I was actually impressed to see the implementation of cutscenes that show you the close-up of certain characters and events. To give you a few examples, we see a close-up of a character with facial expressions, a glass of water being spilled on the floor, and our main character solving certain puzzles. These cutscenes made the game feel more cinematic, and they were done very well for that time. I mean, even the original Resident Evil and Silent Hill didn't have those. Is this the first game to have these type of cutscenes?
It is sad for me to say this is one of the only positives I have for this game.
So Stryker is trespassing through the maze of Hell's Kitchen, he reaches the house, and climbs over the ledges towards the second floor.
Great dedication, but how does he know exactly where Grace was being held on exactly?
Whatever, he reaches a room with Grace sleeping on a bed and he wakes her up. She is happy to see rescue coming for her, but unfortunately things go south for Stryker. Because for some fucking reason, he didn't suspect anything suspicious about this Joker puppet thing. He literally saw it get near him, yet he's like,
nothing's wrong, let's get you out, Grace.
He gets strangled to death and the puppet disappears. Then a woman walks by and decides to get rid of Stryker's body. A few days go by, we are now back to the entrance of Hell's Kitchen, and we finally meet Edward Carnby, the main protagonist from the first game. This game takes place a few months after the Setter incident, and Emily Harwood isn't back for this game, so that makes Carnby the only main PC of this game. Carnby heard the disappearance of his partner in this place. He goes to investigate and convince this guard to let him inside, but he gets rejected immediately. He then leaves his bag in front of the gate. He goes a few steps away, and then
Okay, I'll give them credit for such a badass entrance. But this is still supposed to be a horror game, right?
as you witnessed, Carnby takes no shit from nobody and blows up the gate. The game finally lets you gain control, and the first thing you can do is beat this guy to death. The issue is that this fella takes almost 30 seconds to get up. Once you knock this guy dead, you are given a flask and a Tommy gun.
Pause for a fucking second. This is literally the start of the game and you can already possess a big gun? But this is isn't this a sequel to a horror game where you're supposed to be in a danger a lot? Why? How can you oh my god, I'm speechless. But this is a sequel to Alone in the Dark. You know what? Fuck it. Let's just address the elephant in the room.
Unlike the first Alone in the Dark, the sequel completely ditches all the aesthetics of survival horror. Everything that made the first game unique and revolutionary in terms of the genre did not return for this one. The colors are very vibrant, the music score is cheerful and kid-friendly, and the game focuses on being very action-heavy.
You know what that means?
You will spend most of the game shooting guns, facing enemies with guns, avoiding being killed with guns, even more guns! The first game did not even focus on being very combat heavy. In fact, it was one of the weaker parts of it. The sequel, on the other hand, does not give a shit. You are pretty much forced to use guns and go full action against your opponents. But the worst part about this is that it's not even good. The shooting mechanics are so poorly designed because there are so many occasions in the game in which my gun would not fire, even with full ammo and pressing the shoot button. Look at this, I'm literally trying to kill this enemy. I have him on the spot, but my gun doesn't shoot right away for some reason. That's another problem. The shooting controls are so inconsistent. Do I have to press the up arrow key or do I have to hold it in order to fire? The controls are so unresponsive. There are also some parts in which my gun is shooting at the wrong place, even when I am aiming exactly where I wanted to aim.
What the fuck is this bullshit?
With all these issues aside, by far the actual worst part of the game is enemies staggering you with firearms. Once that happens, there's almost no going back. Just look at this. I died so many times to this guy because he kept spamming his leg gun on me. He doesn't give me a second to throw my punches. How is that fair? I also shouldn't forget to mention that the enemy AI in this game is terrible.
Take a look at this bullshit. You can literally leave the game unpaused, go take a bathroom break, make yourself some sandwich, maybe watch a movie, go back and you will still find Carnby facing his opponent who's shooting past him.
Also, these guys have friendly fire on.
Traitor!
If you are gonna make a game that focuses on gun shooting action, you have to at least get the basics right. Alone in the Dark 2 does not do that because it uses the exact same engine and controls from the first game, which was never built for shooting combat.
You cannot even tell where the enemies are located because the camera is facing away from them and you have to rely on their quotes to figure out their placements.
Morning, sir.
Hey, you.
Morning, sir. Hi, guy.
Hey, you.
That's not even good enough. Okay, with my rant out of the way, let's move on with the story.
So the first thing you do in this game is finding your way into the mansion by going through this maze, which is easily the worst part of the game. I honestly don't understand how this game went past the playtest session. How many players even finished Alone in the Dark 2 at its time? There was no internet in 1993, so I wouldn't be surprised if I hear a big number of rage quits from players back in the day.
Here is a funny story though.
When I first played this game, the first thing I did was to explore the mansion's surroundings before going through the maze. I killed the enemies there, and when I suddenly reached this particular corner, Carnby just happened to float to the top and end up in the underground.
I was so confused about what just happened, so I had to look up on the internet to see if this was a secret level or something. And what do you know?
This passage turns out to be a shortcut to the mansion underground, which is where you are supposed to be anyway after the maze.
So I just happened to skip this maze entirely the first time I played this game, thus saving myself from being completely outraged.
You can literally just use this shortcut to move forward with the story. There is no point in going through the maze unless you enjoy shit like this. I honestly can't tell if this passage is a good thing or a bad thing. It's good because it saves me from frustration, but bad because the devs knew how terrible this level was, and instead of fixing it, they made this shortcut.
Unfortunately for me, when I played this game the second time for this review, I had to go through the maze to show you how bad it is. So I had to suffer for you.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
Anyways, Carnby ends up in the underground, he loses all of his stuff, and finds the body of his partner, Striker.
You know what's funny?
You can actually push his body to the bottom, and if you do so, Carnby says this: "What the fuck, was this a good idea?"
What?
Carnby moves forward, and he finds a guy sleeping near an empty door that leads outside the cliff of Hell's Kitchen. Because you don't have any weapons with you anymore, all you have to do is to make him fall to his death. To do so, you have to wake him up with a blown back.
Hey, you.
Wait a second, who the hell reacts like this when sleeping on a job? Oh, what the fuck? Hey you.
You wake this guy up and just pull this lever to launch a barrel on him, pushing him off the cliff.
Since I don't want this video to go for so long, I'm gonna keep a few points as short as possible.
You finally end up inside the mansion of Hell's Kitchen, and while it's not as bad as the maze in the courtyard, it's still not a good level.
Because there are so many bizarre elements that makes me question what kind of game am I playing? Let's go through a few examples, shall we?
There is this guy in the basement who is playing an instrument, and you can kill him by tearing this music paper apart. Before you reach the ground floor, you have to dress as Santa Claus. I'm not joking. You literally have to do this, because otherwise, this little chef brat will rat you out and call upon his friends to come and kill you.
How does that even work? Carnby doesn't even have a white beard on his face. Even a 7-year-old me will recognize that this is not Santa Claus. Is he just that stupid?
In this main part of the ground floor, you encounter this statue that will suddenly throw sight towards you for an instant kill. This stoned weapon will not stop until you're dead. Thankfully, you can lure it towards this little shit so you can walk peacefully again.
Got him!
When you reach the third floor of the mansion, you encounter this white-suited guy who does front flips all over the place.
What the hell am I playing again?
After you deal with him, you meet up with the clown that killed Striker at the beginning. For some reason, he is harmless towards Carnby. He doesn't kill or hurt you, even when you don't have the Santa suit on. All he does is just stand near Carnby and jump repeatedly to annoy you. I don't understand why that is the case, but nonetheless, you have to get rid of him by luring him towards deadly snakes. Moving on, you throw a grenade through this chimney to get rid of the armed guys in this room. Unfortunately, you still have to deal with a few of them, because they somehow survived this. Best way to do it is to run, stand near this wall, and kill them one by one.
Pair balance? What is that?
After some more explorable stuff that I don't care for, you end up in this dark room, you get ambushed, you get locked in a cell, and you meet up with the main villain of the game, One-Eyed Jack. I will say though, this is the only part of the game that actually creeped me out, because Jack walks towards you very quickly and the game immediately slaps you with this frame in front of you.
Thank you for reminding me that I'm still playing a horror game, even though you ditched all the aspects that made the first game so scary.
So Jack locks you in a cell and he gives you some exposition about his backstory. While he does that, Grace suddenly makes an appearance and she sneaks past Jack very easily. So she was locked in this room but you didn't bother to restrain her before dealing with Carnby?
What a dumbass!
Dumbass!
Grace makes an escape, Jack takes notice of that, he leaves the room, and Carnby escapes by using a golden hook to unlock the cell. How the hell does that work? Beats fucking me, let's just move on. Carnby goes to rescue Grace, but before he could do that, he confronts the woman from the beginning, Elizabeth Jarrett. She turns out to be a witch, she knocks Carnby out with her mind control, and takes him hostage. We are now finally reaching the most unacceptable change of pace for this game. Playing as fucking Grace.
What?
If you thought that playing as Sherry in Resident Evil 2 was boring, this one is 10 times worse for multiple reasons.
First off, Grace's running speed is extremely slow. What kind of kid walks like this? Especially in a place where they have been abducted. Second of all, Grace's campaign takes like half of the final act of the game, and it's a stealth segment, which means that if you get caught, it's an instant game over. The weirdest thing about Grace in this game is that she has gesture animations. If you hold space and press the arrow key buttons, Grace will do something like kicking, marking, moving her hip left and right, and step dancing.
What the hell is the purpose of those? They don't do anything to advance the gameplay. So apparently the developers cared more about implementing a comic relief mechanic than making the game more balanced.
Good job.
You are now playing as Grace, and you have to reach this new area in the courtyard. Let me just tell you this right now, this whole segment served no purpose, because after you solve a certain puzzle, you get captured anyway. I literally do not understand the meaning of this level. If you cut this part of the game, nothing about the story would have been changed, so what gives? So Grace gets captured and she's put in the same place with Carnby, both ending up in Jax's old ship, the Flying Dutchman. And just like her stupid boyfriend, Elizabeth does not handcuff Grace like she did with Carnby here.
You dumbass!
Either way, Elizabeth also happens to share her piece of backstory to Carnby and Grace.
Since we're here, let me explain their history in a short summary.
In the 1700s, Elizabeth was a little girl who had been enslaved by her guardian, Cotton. He was very abusive to her, and she couldn't take it anymore. She learned how to execute witch powers from one of the slaves and killed her guardian for revenge. After doing so, she had been captured and imprisoned in the Flying Dutchman ship. In order to escape this situation, she pulled a spell that was calling out for someone from the outside, and she chose to call One-Eye Jack to rescue her. Jack managed to take over the ship, thus rescuing Elizabeth, and in return, she pulled a spell of immortality on him and his crew. So they all lived past the 18th century. The only catch is that every 100 years, they have to sacrifice an innocent little girl in order to extend their lives and immortality. This is why they kidnapped Grace in the first place.
I'm gonna be honest. I think Jack and Elizabeth have a much better backstory than Ezekiel Prex in the first game. This is way more interesting because it gives both of them a good motivation for their evilness. It is sad for me to say that this is the only thing that the sequel does much better than the first game.
So after getting captured, you have to play as Grace again, and your objective is to find a key to free Carnby from his restraints. According to this talking parrot, Grace needs to possess the captain's staff in order to retrieve the key. Moving on, you have to sneak past some of these pirates, which can be very annoying at times. And before you go through this hall, make sure you grab this object because otherwise, you will be stuck in this room forever, thus getting a roadblock. Grace takes the staff and she goes through a dumbwaiter in the ship kitchen that leads her back to the mansion. She goes back to the room where she was first locked in, and for some reason, using the staff near this desk gives her the key. I don't know how that works, but whatever. Grace goes back to the ship through the dumbwaiter, but as soon as she arrives, she gets ambushed by these chefs. She's brought back to the room with Carnby, but for some stupid reason, this pirate did not confiscate her belongings, and Grace manages to sneak the key towards Carnby. Carnby is free, he saves Grace from this pirate, and this little brat decides to run off for no good reason. Why the hell did she separate herself from the protector?
Well, that's just lazy writing.
You are finally back as Carnby.
And credit where credit is due. This is the only part of the game that I enjoyed.
You explore different rooms of the ship, you solve clever puzzles, and you don't have to deal with enemies with guns anymore. Instead, you can just use a sword against your opponents.
Just like the good old times, eh Carnby? Now that I think about it, I am now realizing where the devs took the idea of pirates being the major factor of this game. You think this is a compliment, right?
Right? Wrong!
There is only one puzzle that bugged me so much in this level. For some reason, this device unlocks this wooden door.
How does that make any sense? How was I supposed to know that this piece of shit is meant for this stupid door? Maybe it would have been better if you made the door more specific by not placing this camera angle at the end of this hallway. Place it somewhere like here so I can see what the door is like. You know what? Let's just move on with the story because this game doesn't care about being logical or a good game anyway. If it doesn't care about making sense, then I'm just gonna rush through.
Carnby reaches Captain's room and he gets restrained again by Elizabeth with her witch spells. Then Grace Ex Machina comes out of nowhere to save the day once again. Luckily, her segment here is very short because all she has to do is unlock the door that leads to Elizabeth's room where she is doing some spelling shit, and you have to insert a chicken foot through her witch desk. This causes Elizabeth and her spell of immortality to evaporate. Carnby is free from the spell and now he has to reach the deck to kill the rest of the pirates once and for all. I am so glad that I don't have to shoot again or avoid any gunfights, I'll give them that. Once you kill all the pirates, you are left off with Jack as the final boss of the game. Jack got Grace tied to a pole, and naturally, you would have to fight him first before cutting her free. But no, the game tells you to do the opposite. You first save Grace, and then you get an epic sword fight with Jack. Carnby ends up defeating Jack, and he and Grace get on a boat to escape, as Jack decides to blow up the entire place with his cannons. The game ends with Carnby and Grace escaping Hell's Kitchen as it gets destroyed, with Grace breaking the fourth wall by waving us goodbye.
So that was Alone in the Dark 2. Let me just say this right now. Fuck this game.
I'm honestly shocked about how much I hated this game. I didn't really have any expectations going through this. I thought it was gonna be like the first game but just a little bit inferior. But no, it is actually much worse. Alone in the Dark 2 did not do anything to continue the tradition of survival horror that was in the first game. This literally feels like it was made by a complete new team who didn't understand why the first game was so successful, and it seems like it was rushed during development. They chose to make this game very action heavy with so much emphasis on combat. Being the main focus of this game, it's the least enjoyable part. The soundtrack, while it's not bad in general, was so annoying and repetitive in every part of the game. It frustrated me so much that I had to turn it off myself. None of the enemies that you face are terrifying whatsoever. These are just people with guns and swords, nothing less. And their AI is absolutely broken. They can be either stupid or downright cheating. Due to how much I despise playing through this game, I didn't care about solving puzzles on my own, so I used the internet as a guide. And I'm glad I did, because some puzzles did not have any logical sense to them.
There are a lot of problems with this game that I can point out. But one thing that bothers me the most is the title.
This game is called Alone in the Dark 2.
Alone? Where? I didn't feel alone in this game in any way, shape or form. There aren't even places where you navigate through the darkness like in the first game. This game doesn't even respect the source material of this IP. This isn't a survival story, it's a rescue mission. It literally could have just been its own thing. All they have to do is replace Carnby with someone else and change the title with something like Pirates in the Mark or Pirates Evil or whatever. Why did they name this game Alone in the Dark? Because money! And that's the only logical answer to that. Overall, guys, I despise this game. I never thought this franchise was going to have more than 2 bad games. But I was wrong. I have never played a horror game that missed the point of the genre in every single level since Layers of Fear. I am officially done talking about Alone in the Dark 2, so let's just go ahead and represent my final verdict.
If you are a fan of the first Alone in the Dark, avoid this game at all costs. If you are a fan of the survival horror genre, avoid this game even more, because you will find yourself raging more than being entertained. Besides the 3 good points that I brought up, you are not missing out on anything playing this shit. This game is illegal to the horror genre.
I can hear some of you guys be like,
But Edward, why are you being so harsh on this game? It was made in 1993 when the gaming media was still evolving at the time.
that's true, but let me tell you something. This game is a sequel to a very influential title, and despite its few shortcomings, I still gave it a positive review. I don't necessarily love it, but I have a lot of respect for it, and I can still enjoy playing it if I had to. For this one, I have zero respect, because it did not do what a sequel is supposed to do, and that is improvement. It has worse enemy variety, worse atmosphere, worse pacing, worse puzzles, and worse gameplay. Alone in the Dark 2 aged much worse than its predecessor. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I am planning to finish this series with the third game, but unfortunately I'm gonna be gone for like 3 weeks because I'm going on a vacation, and I'll let you know when I will be back. In the meantime, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel for more, and I'll see you in the next video. Farewell.